1, 2, 3, go. I got an ego, won't let me go. What we gonna do? A, B, C, D. Paranoia's killing me. Chan's gonna come, it's gonna call me away. Doesn't matter what you do or say.
Moscou, décembre 2016. Vladimir Poutine règne en maître sur la scène internationale. Donald Trump s'apprête à devenir président des États-Unis. Une nouvelle page de l'histoire mondiale s'ouvre. Est-ce la fin de la démocratie? Et la défendre deviendra-t-il un crime? Edward Snowden connaît ces questions mieux que personne. Sous-contractant de la NSA, il a révélé les programmes de surveillance de masse des États-Unis sur la population mondiale. Depuis, il vit en exil en Russie.
I don't go out to nightclubs. You know, I never have. I don't go to bars. I don't drink alcohol. It's just not interesting to me. So I've described myself before in interviews as an indoor cat.
Do you have special requirements regarding phones and everything, or?
No, not here. I mean, there's so many people that I think anybody who wants to know we're here probably already knows we're here. My name is Edward Snowden. I'm, I guess, 33 years old now. You know, the years kind of slip by when you're out in limbo. I thought when I was first transiting Russia that it was a terrifying and temporary trip because I never planned to stay here. And you've got to remember, I came from the CIA, I came from the NSA, right? If you have a picture of Russia on the wall there, it's probably got a big target sign around it. But I must say, although it was never my choice to end up in Russia, I'm glad that I'm not in jail.
4 ans plus tôt, il quitte son poste à Hawaï pour Hong Kong. Dans une chambre d'hôtel, il remet à Laura Poitras et Glenn Greenwald, 2 journalistes indépendants de son choix, des informations confidentielles. Leur révélation secoue Washington qui lance une chasse à l'homme. Snowden est en transfert à Moscou quand son passeport est annulé. Coincé 39 jours dans la zone de transit de l'aéroport, il multiplie les demandes d'asile. L'Allemagne, la Suisse, la France, 21 pays s'inclinent devant la pression des États-Unis. Horripilant Washington, la Russie lui délivre un permis de résidence. Il arrive à échéance dans 6 mois. La relation entre les États-Unis et la Russie est devenue illisible. Le temps d'Edward Snowden en exil semble compter.
The idea that great powers and countries can trade people away without regard to human rights is of course possible. Do I have any influence over it? No. If they want to do it, can I stop it? No. Will I worry about it? No. If my priority was safety, I never would have left the NSA. I'd still be spying on you today. There are things that matter more than safety. And I think the things that I believe in are worth the risk.
Edward Snowden n'est pas le premier lanceur d'alerte de la CIA et de la NSA, ni le seul à défendre la citoyenneté et l'Internet libre. Avec l'Américain Larry Lessig et la députée islandaise Birgitta Jónsdóttir, entre autres, ils crient dans le désert et se soutiennent à distance depuis des années. Professeur de droit, Larry Lessig fait intervenir Edward Snowden à Harvard. Députée, Birgitta Jónsdóttir œuvre pour offrir l'asile politique aux lanceurs d'alerte en Islande. Trump au pouvoir, ils perdent une bataille. Ils ne s'étaient jamais rencontrés. Il y a urgence. Nous les rassemblons à Moscou alors que les soupçons d'ingérence de la Russie dans les élections américaines émergent. Alors que le pays enterre son ambassadeur assassiné en Turquie. Alors qu'Edward Snowden délivre ses interviews au compte-gouttes. Alors que le monde prépare Noël. Rincés par l'histoire, ils vont s'unir à Moscou autour de la seule question qui vaille. Comment sauver la démocratie?
So I'm Larry Lessig.
À Harvard, Larry Lessig dirige un centre de recherche sur la corruption. Homme du sérail, il multiplie conférences et ouvrages sur l'influence de l'argent en politique. Il lance une mobilisation citoyenne, tente de fédérer des parlementaires susceptibles de changer la loi sur le financement des campagnes électorales, cause selon lui de tous les maux. Il se présente à l'élection présidentielle, le Parti démocrate l'éjecte de la course.
For the last decade, I've been obsessively focused on how to revive a sense of democracy in America and around the world. I've tried increasing number of crazy ideas to try to bring about fundamental change. Because there's an increasing gap between who the democracy represents and the people. And increasingly the people feel that gap. Trump was elected because he tapped into an extraordinary frustration that Americans have with their government, with the sense that their government does not represent them. And the more outrageous he was, the more politically incorrect he was, the more he convinced the people that the elite hated him, so they should love Donald Trump. Because between the authenticity of a person willing to be completely politically incorrect and the fake integrity of every other politician on stage, it was an unfair fight for an America so cynical about their politicians.
My name is Birgitta Jónsdóttir.
Auteure, punk, mère célibataire, elle coproduit la vidéo Collateral Murder, qui en 2010 révèle au monde l'assassinat à bout portant de citoyens irakiens par l'armée américaine. Débarquée en politique à la faveur de la crise des subprimes, elle n'a qu'une obsession: aider les citoyens à se réapproprier leurs décisions, leur destin.
I am a poetician, and I actually decided in the wake of the crisis to establish a political movement that should go inside the system in order to understand it, so that we could actually create alternative systems. And I established the Pirate Party with others, and we got elected in 2013, and we got recently in election 10 members of parliament out of 63. I think our uniqueness is mostly about the possibilities of engagement to bring the power back to the people, or take it from the powerful and give it to the general public, to be Robin Hood of power. The biggest service we can do right now is just to think of innovative ways for people to feel that they are part of democracy, that to help them understand that, you know, our systems are not separated from us, that we are the systems.
What was revealed was not just about surveillance. That's what people get because that's how the news covered it. But the larger question was, how did we end up in this system where everybody in the world is being monitored, watched, and recorded, and we never got a vote? We never even knew what was happening. Our officials that were supposed to be voting on our behalf didn't even tell us. Increasingly, governments are considering hacking to be completely legal as long as they do it. And there are cases where this is a valuable authority, and you can understand why they would want to do this. The reality, and this is not my claim, this is from the White House, is that mass surveillance has never stopped a single terrorist attack in the United States. These programs were never about terrorism. They're about diplomatic manipulation, economic espionage, and social influence. They're about power. When we were exposed for doing it, in violation of human rights and laws around the world, we made only the narrowest reforms. We only tailored it at the edges. And as soon as public attention began to be distracted by some new controversy, they started thinking, can we pressure our allies to adopt the same laws that we had to make us less vulnerable to criticism? The most extreme and intrusive surveillance laws in the history of the West have now been passed into law in the United Kingdom. Germany has been pressured to pass similar laws. France has now passed new laws on mass surveillance. And we have created a new kind of domino theory, where rather than trying to push back the expansion of communism around the world, keeping that first domino from falling and communism spreading to other countries, as they said during the Cold War, today the domino theory is about the loss of our rights. People who say, if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. What they're saying is, things are good enough. We'll take care of everything. Give up your power. Give up your freedom and let us take care of you. Trust us. But democracy is not about trust. Democracy is about effort.
So we're filming this the day before the Electoral College will vote on whether Donald Trump will be our next president. And there's a movement to get electors to vote against their pledge. America has been reminded that these electors were meant to exercise judgment. Constitutionally, they were intended to be a kind of final fail-safe before you select a president. I've been, doing as much media as I possibly can, and I've been writing as much to kind of create the story, like a narrative that helps people understand how we get to where we are. I went around to lawyer after lawyer, senior lawyers, law firms, and they just wouldn't do it. And then we tried to recruit people to help us to at least make electors aware of their constitutional freedom to vote their conscience. And they refused to step up. The victory is too uncertain. They don't want to be embarrassed. They don't want to be me. They don't want to be in the position I'm in right now. And this dynamic is what's terrifying, because when you look, these people all believe this is the apocalypse. They believe this is a disaster. And yet, when they're not willing to risk personal sacrifice in the face of this, it's really scary. So they all stand silent.
Larry Lessig tente un dernier recours pour éviter l'élection définitive de Donald Trump. Les réseaux se déchaînent.
I can't even open my inbox because it's just so ugly. But, criticism always includes a reference to a gun in some way. And it's like a normal way to think about how you express your disagreement, that I disagree with you and I have a gun.
How long will it be until they arrive? Birgitta and Larry are seeing not just what's here, but what's coming, and maybe why we got here in the first place.
I was this close to be able to form a very progressive government in Iceland. It was just so close. I could just touch it, and then I just watched it, slip away. But we now have actually done something that everybody needs to start to think about. And we've actually made an alternative. Anybody can actually write the policy. You don't even have to be in the party. You just have to then take it through a process, and then we take it into our voting system. Then it might actually end up as a law or a resolution or something that becomes a new policy in Iceland. I always felt that, myself, that if I wanted to live in my dream world, I had to help create it.
That's them.
Sometimes, just history comes knocking, and this is one of these moments.
It's a good time to have this conversation because it feels like we're at an end, at a dead end, at a blockage. Please come in. How are you?
I'm good.
Oh, so good to see you.
Yeah, finally.
Long way. Thank you for coming.
Great to meet you. Thank you for coming all this way. Please.
Well, it's extraordinary times for call for extraordinary measures.
Yeah.
Oh, you're one of these geeks.
But do you guys want anything to drink or before we get started?
Some water.
Yeah, I would love some water.
Do we?
Yeah, I'll take the gas.
Should have asked. Sorry.
Yeah, how long are we gonna be on camera?
As much as you want. As much as you can discuss with us that we can know of. So we're gonna go on film. Is that okay?
Good.
So, a poet, a lawyer, and a geek walk into a bar. And the question is, why do we believe in democracy anymore? What's the potential? Why do we think this makes sense? Because look, there's a lot of good evidence against it right now. You've had the best experience of any of us in trying to redefine what politics will be like. The Pirate Party in Iceland, even though you were incredibly successful, almost 15% of the population supported you. The winner, almost by a factor of 3, the party that got the largest support was exactly the opposite conception of
Yeah,
politics.
it's the party that talks about stability and indoctrines, the fear of change and so forth. When we're really successful and we are in the polls, I knew that we would never get that much during the elections because it's harder to get young people to go out and vote. And our greatest support base is people below 25. But there was another element, a very strong element that was at play. Some of the media guys in Iceland were talking to guys like Bloomberg, were reporting to them that investors were, pulling back because, there could be a Pirate Party victory in Iceland. I know that it had an influence on people that might have voted for us, but got afraid that, we would get into some sort of economic havoc again. So they played on exactly the right fears. And, one can become very frustrated that these things that we're so close to getting have not happened. But one also has to recognize that if the idea is not in the right time, if you try to push it when it's not ready, it's like having a premature baby.
But what frustrates me is I feel like we act as if we live within a democracy. Mm-hmm. But it's like communists in Russia in 1976, right? It's like they pretended that they had a communist system, but they had this completely corrupted bureaucratic structure that defeated all whatever ideals that they had. But today in the United States, right now, this very day, people are struggling with the question whether, quote, electors, people who have been selected for the purpose of exercising their vote for the President of the United States, have the freedom to vote. But the point is, we don't have anything like a representative democracy in the United States today. Yet there's no place to say that without sounding like a crazy.
Historically, we've had radicals in society. We've had factions and groups that say all kinds of crazy things. And over time, through some means that we may not fully understand yet, what can be considered serious has been narrowed and narrowed and narrowed until what can be discussed and credited as a not crazy statement precisely aligns with what the most powerful institutions in a society agree is that. So now what you can discuss and be considered a serious person is strictly limited to the institutions that are exercising an influence that we don't necessarily want. And I can think of no more clear example of this than recently you, Larry, you campaigned for President of the United States. Your campaign platform was about something very different, which was about getting the financial influence of these core corrupting influences in society out of our electoral process. And this was treated as a kind of heresy. We saw these influences that are normally very hard to see. They happen very slowly at the margins, and they creep in, suddenly crash in like a wave to treat you who, you're a serious, very well-respected professor in the United States. And yet there was a clear effort to paint you as a crazy person for talking about something that seems incredibly reasonable, and if you poll the American public, is incredibly popular. What do you think was happening there?
Well, let's separate the part that's about me in particular from the more general point about why real solutions can't be discussed. So I was originally advising Bernie Sanders, but when I said to Bernie Sanders, look, you've got to make fixing this corrupted system the primary push. Because if you don't, everything else you're talking about is just crazy talk. Look, you and I can agree that single-payer healthcare would be a reasonable idea to at least discuss. But it's crazy talk so long as we have a political system where the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies and the medical establishment have so much power in politics. So make fixing democracy first. So when he refused to do that, it's a crazy idea. I decided I wanted to be a candidate to at least get to the debates, to at least have a chance to make it clear how every issue was affected by this issue, like everything tied back. And, of course, they set up the rules. I said if we raised $1 million, I would run. We raised $1 million, I ran. The rules said I had to get a certain percentage in the debates. And when I got those percentages, they changed the rules, so I couldn't get into the debate. And the point is, we aren't allowed to talk about the solution. It's ruled off the table. The only thing we can talk about is the kind of hate politics, the politics of hate that both operates within parties and between parties. And it's no accident that that's because this turns out to be the sexiest thing for cable news to follow.
What is that?
Девушка, можно?
Later.
Вам нужно срочно сейчас? Нет. Можно потом? Спасибо.
We're going to go again. This is, I guess, take 3. If I can ask one follow-on question, it's a little bit radioactive. If we have a democracy, even in part, even if it's not a properly functioning democracy, and we keep getting bad outcomes, how much is the public responsible for this? And how much of it is systemic? Maybe there is a fundamental weakness that's about access to information, that's about the way that we communicate. People have called it fake news, where people will come across some very interesting story that could be completely untrue, but they want to believe it's true. It confirms their biases, even if it's not. So they share it, they spread it. That signal to their friends, to members of their tribe, if you will, that they get it, that they're with it, they're on your side, they're supplying political ammunition. They're sort of being a good soldier on the side because they're trying to win a power struggle. And we end up poisoning our own wells because of our own sort of unexamined biases. And one of the big effects is that it seems our individual voices have lost value as a result. We can reduce the importance of speech by flooding the zone with it. It becomes difficult to separate fact from fiction, to separate true from false.
Exactly. The problem that we are faced with today is that it's so easy to divide people. It's so easy to, you know, say, like, look at the narrative about Russia and America now.
Sure.
Particularly when everybody is resource-bounded. You've got on the front page of just one newspaper, the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Guardian, whatever, 30 stories on an average web page. How many of those can you actually read? There's been research done recently that said something like 60% of Americans only read headlines. They never actually click through to the stories. So suddenly headlines have become more important than the reporting itself.
And then they are clickbaits. So, you know.
Yeah, in some context. Let's hope that they don't all follow that. But yeah, it's a serious issue. But again, why is clickbait a thing? Why is fake news a thing? Because people are rewarded for it. Authors can write a truly fake story and share it because it gets more clicks, it gets more responses. Outrage sells. It creates a counter-reaction. People want to fight back. Exactly. Really, it's about passion. How do we mitigate the frailties of human nature?
Well, I was on Wall Street. I was talking to one of these Wall Street bankers, and he's like, yeah, this is going to be terrible for my kids, really bad for the environment, but we're going to do really well.
I like to think of these problems as questions of emergent behavior. You have to structure a system of incentives such that it's in the decision maker's interest to act in the most moral, most appropriate way.
I always wondered when you went through the drama of your act of citizenship. I mean, you put your life on the line, took an act to make the public aware of something that should have outraged people on the left and the right. Their government was lying to them. There was perpetual surveillance being spread without any acknowledgement by our government. And this violated anybody's conception of what rights should be. I just wonder, when you did that and you didn't see America react by saying thank you, but instead you saw America react by saying he's a traitor, like this, you should be locked up, right? Now, when you saw that, you know, were you as wise as you seem? Like, well, this is just where we are?
Look, I mean, I knew it was coming. In fact, I said it in that first interview that came out in The Guardian. I said, look, my greatest fear is that nothing will change. Now, things actually have changed. The Congress changed laws as a result. The president signed them. And the courts ruled that laws that had previously gone without question had been illegal and possibly unconstitutional for more than a decade. It's not enough. Yes, we do get some crazy people on both the left and the right who come out against it. And these people aren't what we would consider traditionally crazy. These are, in fact, the ones who are in that serious people category. But that's why they come out against me. They see not the issue of unconstitutional mass surveillance in the United States. They see an individual challenging the stability, the structure, the dignity, if you will, the reputation of the governing class, the governing elite. And, you know, it's right for them to disagree with. In fact, I'm happy to defend their opportunity to condemn me, because that's not why I acted. It wasn't for them. It's that something changes, something of the gravity of the problems that we face, and the necessity of dissent, of resistance when you're faced with them. My coworkers, when I talked to them, they were deeply concerned about it. They saw it as problematic. They saw it as likely unconstitutional. But they said, you know what happens to people who speak up. And when I was sitting there, it wasn't abstract ideas of the, beauty and honor of the US Constitution. Ultimately, that's a personal decision you have to make. What does it mean to you? And the question of democracy that we've been describing, for me, came down to this concept that it's not enough to believe in something. You have to stand for something or it doesn't exist. When it came to that, I didn't want to be on the guy on DX. Again, I was really happy. A young guy, a technologist, didn't graduate from high school, making an extraordinary amount of money.
Living in Hawaii.
Living in Hawaii, of course, with the love of my life. And life is easy. All I have to do is spy on people. That's it. It's not a hard job. It's anyone here could do it. But the problem was never going to get better unless somebody did something about it. And I had waited, and I had waited. And no one else was doing anything about it. I talked to other people. People are scared like hell. I was scared like hell. But not doing it became worse than doing it. And there's this idea that one of the strongest ways for people to make a difference is to recognize the things that they do know. The things that they don't have to be educated by other people on because it's their life, it's near them, it's happening locally. They understand the issues, they understand the players. And to recognize that there are no heroes. Nobody's going to come around and fix this for you, right? There is no class of person who goes around there, an adventurer, they're fixing all the problems. That person is you. It's us, it's all of us, every time. And I think, yeah, I'm not going to save the world. I took my best shot, didn't work, right?
No, but you did.
But the thing is, you don't have to. It's not up to you alone. All you have to do is something. All you have to do is put a brick on the ground so that someone else can put their brick on top of it. And step by step, I think we are. We are going to have problems. We are going to have politicians. We are going to have elections where they come in and they knock all the bricks over, right? But there are more of us than there are of them.
Sorry, we have to cut for a technical reason.
Yeah, we have to.
Yeah, but the thing is, whenever an individual does something, like you did, you've done it, I've done it, because you just feel you must, after. And it's this recognition that it's not only that individuals can change the world, it's this recognition that you must as well. And you might not change with a big bang, but
Well, it's also, like you said, good examples. We need positive examples. We need people trying. We need people striving, right? Even if they don't make it.
I think coming back to where we were just before we had to cut about the need for courage. And I want to think a little bit about the different contexts in which, there's extraordinary courage, extraordinary sacrifices, and small. And you were talking about relatively small, and you've got to think about, a little bit more about what makes it possible for people to be able to be courageous.
Okay, I don't remember what take we're on, but we'll go from here. Final leg.
But earlier in this conversation, you also made the point about how small the table is. And that critical parts of the conversation are just off the table. And what's really terrifying is when, in order to make a critical point, you've basically got to leap off the table. I mean, you had to sacrifice. I guess you imagine you were going to sacrifice everything. You were more lucky than it turned out you expected to be. I've never had to make a sacrifice as big as yours. But I have been in this position where I felt like the right thing to do is self-destructive in a certain way. It's leaping off of a cliff, and there's nothing at the bottom, but it's the thing that has to happen if it's going to begin to move the conversation in the right way. And I just wonder, when you reflect on that, what is it that we can imagine inspiring people to do here? when the table is so small and we can't get the right answers on the table.
Temporary insanity. That would be my excuse. No, I do think it's unrealistic to rely on altruism or self-sacrifice. We've talked today about incentives. Perhaps this is the core problem. People believe that truly participating in a meaningful way in their system, trying to change things for the better, seeing a central injustice and trying to challenge it, will cost them more than they gain. Maybe that's what needs to change. We have seen the last decade is perhaps the clearest example in modern history of the effectiveness of the politics of fear. Fear works as a political strategy. The only thing a politician needs to do to carve a gaping hole in our most treasured sort of values, our heritage, our history, our system of laws, our protection of rights, is say, because terrorism. Done. That's all it takes. Repeated enough times like an incantation, and rights will just evaporate, get out of the way, and the law will pass. What if we could change that?
Yeah.
Exactly.
But you know, if you imagine you were 20 years older and you had 3 kids in college and you know, a mortgage, and your partner was someone who had a career that, you know, then your refusal to do the brave thing is really an act of charity or generosity to them.
Yeah,
because you're so tied, you're bonded together.
But the larger dynamic behind what you were describing there, older people who are more established, they are, in many ways, the establishment. They're not the big establishment that's, you know, keeping people down, but they have lost a large part of their democratic influence because they have something they are afraid to lose. Fear enters back in. We have to break the fear.
Crisis is coming, but are we ready?
Yeah.
I think there's an honesty to that none of us are special, right? In fact, the most interesting commonality of our backgrounds is how different we are. And maybe this is, I mean, you know, not to get too cute in the answers here, but this is the beautiful thing about that idea we were describing of why democracy? Why do we even care anymore? Well, it's about the right of self-determination. Ordinary people can do extraordinary things. And if they don't, there are costs to that are greater than what we put on the table.
Exactly. And that's exactly the point. That we are all just ordinary people that felt inspired to, you know, take a leap of faith for...
I'm more ordinary than you are.
No. You know, I'm the most ordinary. Defined by my standards.
We're all going to fight over who's
Yes.
the most ordinary.
Okay, so let's throw a dice on that.
This has been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been a really wonderful
I really
conversation.
love this.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks.
It's awesome.
So good to see you. Happy? Can we lose the cameras?
Thank you.
In the end, as I walked out, you know, the part that I was hopeful of, that we would have a plan, there'd be a way to go forward, like an obvious way to go forward, didn't happen. The idea that he put on the table, which was so compelling, the idea that we can't put on the table the things that we need to be talking about. And that drives people, reformers like me, to recognize that we've got to be willing to risk craziness in order to inject this issue back into ordinary political debate. And that's difficult because There's only so many times you can be crazy before you are crazy. There's only so many times you can leap off of a building before people start locking you up and saying you're not allowed to go out anymore. And the failures pile on. One person I didn't even know wrote me, "You need to take on projects you can win." And I thought, you know, there are a lot of people taking on projects they can win. We need people to take on projects that they will lose. But because losing, they can move the argument at least.
The key to be able to function in these sort of times we're in is to just be able to willing to let go. It's not really about losing. It's just, you know, this serenity, you know, that nothing in this world is hammered out in a rock. Nothing. Because eventually this rock becomes dust and grains of sand. Maybe it's just like being able to let go of fear of change. It's much easier to control people that are afraid than people that are self-confident and believe in a collective future. We need to start to create new narratives, that it's safe to change, that stability is an illusion. It doesn't exist.
The refusal of the elite to confront the fact that democracy will not accept a system where they win and the people lose left us open for a populist and this incredibly destructive dynamic. I feel like I spent way too much time accepting the skepticism, taking it on board. And you have to ignore the experts in a moment of fundamental transformation, because the experts are experts within the system, not experts about how to get the system changed.
Larry et Birgitta quittent Moscou, laissent Edward Snowden. Ses idées l'ont rendu apatride. Dans cette chambre d'hôtel, en exil, le temps s'étire. Il va bientôt redisparaître. Il n'habite plus que l'Internet.
The question we struggle with is, who defines the eras? Who defines history? Who defines when change happens, when it started, when it ended? Every progressive action that's happened throughout history has grown out of a system that people saw was inadequate, a system that people saw was unfair, and that they then disrupted, they then overturned to lead to a new system. If we can't allow failure, what we're saying is that we can't allow progress. Periods of peace have given rise to a kind of complacency that allows demagogues, that allows fringe elements to exploit people's politeness that was born from comfort, right? Because we didn't have to struggle, we didn't have to fight. We didn't actually have to stand up and defend our ideas because we simply believed that they could not possibly be threatened. And now, perhaps we become too polite. Perhaps we become too quiet. Perhaps our own comfort is our worst enemy. Being in Russia has taught me to remember that even those people that you've been taught for years and years and years are not that different from yourself. the Russian people want the same thing. They want success, they want freedom, they want liberty. It is in these moments of instability where it becomes very fashionable to say the world has gone mad, there's nothing we can do. But I think these are the moments where hope matters the most. Individuals have never been more connected. We are more educated. We are more well-resourced in absolute terms rather than relative terms. Is it enough? I think so. Are the challenges great? Definitely. But the reality is this: if we coordinate, if we think, if we work together, if we share the things we believe in, if we persuade people, not just in our communities, but around the world, we can construct bonds of fraternity that don't even see borders. Right? We can create ties between human hearts, minds that speak different languages, that can unite into something that is bigger than any government, perhaps bigger than all governments, because we share a commonality of values. We can construct a system of incentives that is blind to class and aware only of our humanity.